happy with this gold medal.
Yes, and Geno Petriashvili, he said that he's dedicating his Olympic gold to the heroes of the Shindisi battle. We call them Shindisi heroes. This is one of the most distinguished heroic moments of the 2008 Russian invasion of Georgia, Russia-Georgia war. Georgia was already retreating from our positions, and it happened on August 11th. It was like more than 100 Russian soldiers against just like around 20 Georgian ones, and eventually like our heroes fell, and there was this episode when they held like a collective prayer. They said the Lord's Prayer out loud together, and then they sacrificed their lives for Georgia. While like halting Russian advance for a time being and giving passage to others, other Georgians. So yes, Geno attributed and dedicated his victory to the Shindisi heroes, and it's very. President Zurabishvili also tweeted and commented that it's a symbol of resilience of Georgia, and very much like a reflection of modern Georgia, that a child who's been kidnapped by Russians and held hostage then like goes on to become an Olympic champion. It's very symbolic.
This Georgian resilience is in our DNA basically. Georgia has been fighting Russia since basically 19th century. We've been at war for 2 centuries now basically, and since 2008 war, Russians have been just kidnapping people randomly who live there in the occupied areas, who might be just on business there. We also had a famous president of Dr. Waja, who was a famous doctor and who was kidnapped by the occupation regime, and eventually he was released. And yes, we have this kind of crazy neighbor that randomly gets drunk and kidnaps people. Yeah. We have to deal with such type of neighbor, but this has given us certain resilience that Geno Petriashvili has certainly proved it, that despite the hardships, despite the traumas, despite the battles, he has proceeded and became an Olympic champion in the freestyle amongst 125 kilogram in wrestling, freestyle wrestling. And yes, this is a historic moment for him, for Georgia. Speaking of battles, Ukraine has also been showing a lot of resilience lately, and they have been showing the warrior spirit that they have. And despite the odds, they have managed to advance, and now nobody even can deny it. No, not even Putin, not other officials, that the war has now moved on to the territory of Russia, and we don't know how the situation will unfold, but Marika posted about this on Twitter, and she asked people to post memes, and one of the memes was like, there is not much territory left between Kursk and Moscow.
Yes, there were actually some of really great memes. In one of them, Zelensky says, okay, we stop here on the map, and the general asks why, and this is already Alaska. Yeah, apparently, humor is a really good, a very catchy thing, and something that people can relate to, because that my request to share memes with me had 2.5 million views. I was shocked. So, and I was joking, if I had known that, I would have added a request to impose sanctions on the Georgian team. Well, then it wouldn't have gotten the 2.5 million, but still. And Russia has been so hysterical about it and so funny. It's such an irony. Even now, a while ago, they posted that the European Union has double standards, because while they condemn Israel for bombing Gaza, they're not condemning Ukraine for bombing and civilians in Russia and invading Russia. And compared to what some Westerners feared would happen, or some expected to happen in case Russia's so-called red lines were violated, Russia isn't in any position to escalate anything further, let alone use an actual nuclear weapon. All they're doing is like crying hard and asking for international condemnation of Ukraine's invasion of their territory. This is really fun. Yeah.
And since we started about the Ukrainian step for the Russian territories, we know the information that military volunteers from the occupied Georgian regions of Abkhazia and Tkhinvali have been sent to Russia's Kursk region to fight on the Russian side against Ukrainian forces. Fighting between the Russian and Ukrainian armies has continued since Ukrainian forces entered the Kursk region on the morning of August 6th, and these people from the regions of Abkhazia and Tkhinvali they have been sent to fight with the Russians against Ukrainians.
Yes, and on topic, so today the Georgian Dream issued a very big statement on their Facebook page, saying that the Saakashvili government and the United National Movement government, they tried very hard to provoke Russia for years to have a war, but Russia abstained and avoided the war. So Russia was not responding to Georgia's provocations until it just couldn't bear anymore, and wasn't like so everything was escalated very badly by Saakashvili, so Russia had to respond. And then they promised to prosecute and hold public prosecutions of the previous government. And we all know what they mean by previous government and collective United National Movement. As they say, they mean everyone, anyone who is opposing their opinion. So you don't need to be a party member of the United National Movement. You can be just anyone in Georgia not allied with the Georgian Dream. So what they're basically saying is that Georgia started the war, and they were capitalizing heavily on the Heidi Taliavini's 2009 fact-finding mission report, attributing the beginning of the war to Georgia. Well, that's what the Georgian Dream is doing in today's statement as well. So just to get into the Taliavini report a little bit, Taliavini report says that the date of the beginning of the war is the night from August 7 to August 8, when Georgia launched a large-scale attack against the Tkhinvali region. And that's basically the first line of the report. But after the comma, then there's a lot of things that the Georgian Dream and Russian propaganda are not addressing. For example, Taliavini report says that there were some Russian forces already inside Georgia who were not peacekeepers, were likely mercenaries. It also says that the peacekeepers that were there might not have been considered peacekeepers anymore because of their behavior and actions, so it was questionable whether they could be counted as peacekeepers at all. And it also says that like days before the August 7th, the attacks against Georgian populated villages there were amounted to a full-scale attack, full-scale war attacks. From around August 6, I suppose. There were also some weapons used, prohibited from the Georgian Ossetian ceasefire agreement from before. And overall, the report says that overall responsibility cannot be attributed to either of the sides. So it's like neither here nor there, some sort of ambiguous report that the Russian propaganda and the Georgian Dream, being part of the Russian propaganda, like to capitalize on. But they're interpreting it very single-sidedly. Like overall, the Taliavini report does not attribute the blame to any side, but now the Georgian Dream tries to use it as some sort of a proof of Saakashvili's blame in the war. And so they're usually saying that blaming Saakashvili does not mean blaming Georgia, but again, as we spoke last time as well, you cannot blame Hitler without blaming Germany, right? And right now, what narrative they're trying to push is that for the past few months, they've been saying that the Saakashvili government was a foreign-imposed regime in Georgia, not representing the people of Georgia. And now, since they're saying that they are the only guarantors of peace, and the opposition will be bringing war, and the opposition does not represent the Georgian people, they represent some foreign powers. They're saying that as soon as the opposition comes to power, if that happens in October, there will be full-scale war between Russia and Georgia. So now they are bringing the 2008 war as a reference, as some sort of a historical proof that a foreign-imposed government in Georgia has already done so, has already caused war in Georgia. But unfortunately, so I get lots of questions also on Twitter, why Georgians buy it. Well, the majority does not, but some minority in Georgia, they have a difficulty equating government with the state. So they don't fully understand that blaming Saakashvili equals blaming Georgia. And they are very much blinded by opposition to him and hatred against him. I also attribute it to a lack of tradition of statehood. So most Georgians, not most Georgians, but most Georgian Dream voters. Sorry, my mistake. Most Georgian Dream voters seem to me that they're okay with having this Georgian language, identity, and Khingali and Khachapuri and all of that. So as long as that is preserved, it's absolutely fine, but a statehood and state institutions and state independence is a little bit of a complex phenomenon because as long as Georgia remains on the map and Georgia's core identity like language and cuisine and whatever is unaffected by Russia, they have a very hard time seeing that the government, whatever the government does, is actually pro-Russian because for more than 200 years Georgia didn't really have any actual statehood because we were occupied by Russia, and Georgian collective mentality has been affected by that. And many Georgians, unfortunately, not a majority of course, but a little bit sizable minority, has this ethnographic understanding of nation, they are okay with being a cultural nation rather than a statehood nation. So I think that overlaps with it. But actually putting a blame on Georgia might be a losing strategy for the Georgian Dream. And I should also mention that the International Criminal Court and European Court of Human Rights have issued their verdicts on 2008 war and war crimes during and after war. And they have issued arrest warrants against the opposing sides, so Ossetians and Russians, not Georgians. So Georgian side was not found guilty in violating international human rights massively or torture, unlawful detainment and all of that. So I think if that was the case, the international court would have addressed it.
I will add on top of the Talyavin's report. This is really old news. This happened 16 years ago. Everybody already has read this report, and it has been analyzed in many committees. And this report clearly says that the shooting started in Khingali area from Russians on 6th of August. Actually, they were shooting randomly in the direction of Georgian territories in order to provoke Georgian side towards military action. This is clearly stated in the report. And also Georgia acted within its own borders. But why are we even discussing it right now?
Exactly.
That's the point. I think we can safely say that Bidzina Ivanishvili and his Russian Dream team, they are like TikTokers who are TikTok influencers who sell useless products and who are trying to scam their followers. Right now they are using this war sort of for marketing purposes. Everything basically that they say is for marketing purposes. Yes. They do not care about the state, they do not care about the relationships of the state. They just see this, probably they did a poll and they understand the sort of what kind of expectation is among the people, what is the opinions, and they want to create some sort of opinion that now it is the time to, put on trial Saakashvili's regime. And now that's their marketing strategy. Everything they say, from the point of 2012, they came to power using the prisoners. At that time, Georgia was in top 3 countries in Europe by the number of prisoners. Basically, every third Georgian had some type of problem with the court system. Has either been in prison or was fined or knew somebody who was fined. Basically, it was a huge deal for everyone that the court system was a problem, the criminal justice system had a lot of issues. That's why the people wanted to re-elect that previous government. And this Russian dream used this strategy. They saw this opportunity. There is a lot of people around this topic, so let's play that we are the knights in the shining armor, and they came in power with a promise that they would somehow bring justice. We've seen that they really have no idea how to even rule the state. They have no initiative, no vision. They have made no reforms. And what's worse, people somehow believe that this government is a little bit more tolerant than the previous one, where this government has stayed in power for 12 years. And Saakashvili has left the government, the presidency, after he was re-elected on second term. Basically, Saakashvili, whatever we can say that his government was not ideal, he made many mistakes, but in the end he let go of the power. He understood the process of democracy.
There were red lines for him. Yes.
Of course, they made their criminal system is what we have right now, and it's terrible. The justice system, the court, it all requires reforms. But this government has no right to speak about any kind of investigation at this point because they've been in power for 12 years and they do not want to change anything. They just want to keep the situation as it is. That's why the West has become an enemy right now. That's why they do not even talk with the senators, and we will discuss this shortly.
Yes.
But we can move on to the real investigation. That investigation, which Bizina is talking about, is just a marketing strategy.
If I may add, just
Sure.
very briefly, so they kept all of this corrupt justice system. They just unseated the government, but all the judges and everyone got promoted. But to other point, the fact that they are so focused on the war issue means that they have no positive agenda to offer to the people. They have nothing new. There are no new topics, no new promises, no nothing. The Georgian dream is even not campaigning right now in the regions while the opposition is. So again, they have nothing to offer to the people, except for just this warmongering or whatever propaganda. So it means that they are quite exhausted in terms of creative.
Of course.
But with the war propaganda, I personally think that this propaganda works for. That's why there are Georgian Dream supporters who buy this kind of propaganda, because it's natural to us that we fear the war,
exactly.
because the war means that someone is killed. So it's very rational that people fear the war, and that's what Georgian Dream is left with. The only thing that they can cause the fear of people, protests didn't work. Lots of things didn't work with the Georgian Dream, and they could not manage to do a campaign narrative. So the only thing that they're left with is the war, which really works with people who have seen the war, and Georgian people have seen lots of wars throughout the years. So it's very rational that people fear this. But on the other side, opposition and CSOs and lots of supporters of Europe and Atlantic integration, they should be explaining more about this propaganda, what it really is, because I fear that Georgian Dream will continue with this main narrative of the war throughout the campaign, and it will be horrible for us to really make people understand what this really is, because it's really hard for Georgians to get even their Georgian Dreams narrative on the billboards. It is that we will enter the Europe with dignity, and that is the only
peace, yeah.
And peace, yeah. So Georgian opposition and Georgian CSOs really need to explain this propaganda narrative to people.
The Russian dream is basically holding Georgian electors in hostage. This is how I see the situation, that when they speak about the war, when they basically voice the Russian propaganda that somehow the West is to blame for everything and Russia is our friend with the open arms ready to receive us, they are basically threatening Georgian electors that if you re-elect us or if you want to change us, you will then face Russia and there will be conflict. They are basically using terrorist strategy to threaten people with war. And they think this is somehow moral, and somehow this makes them a peace party. When on the contrary, the only option that Georgian people have for peace is development, is to develop our economy, is to develop our diplomacy, our relationships with the West, which helps us then develop our military, our whole country basically, as it has been going for more than 30 years now, that Georgian integrity basically stands on the shoulders of the United States and the European Union. The aids, the funds that they've been helping Georgia, we built this country using their resources. And all of a sudden, why did the West become the enemy to Georgian integrity and sovereignty? Because democracy does not work like Russian Dream wants. They have been in power for 12 years now. It is simply time for a change, and they do not want to let go. That's why they just stopped communicating with the West, because they don't want to let go of power, because the West tells them, okay guys, I thought we agreed on these democracy rules that we need political pluralism, where you cannot be the only party in parliament. We know that the other parties, they don't really decide anything there, and the voters, they should have some kind of say in this process, that you should take into consideration the people's needs. Also, you should rotate the people in power. It cannot be one party leadership for eternity. Also, there should be some separation of power. One person should not rule the entire nation. One election should not guarantee absolute power. And the West has these key issues. This was in the, it was 9 points with the EU's representatives who came to Georgia to stabilize the political situation. But frankly, the Russian Dream Party, they do not care about democracy, change, separation of power. They want to hold the situation as it is, and they have clearly started to go into full authoritarianism. And they have Russian backing, of course. The Russians applause all of this, since their rhetoric has changed towards the West. The West has been, of course, the West has not been sitting on the sidelines. They have tried to communicate with Georgia. Even this week, we've had the U.S. senators, Senator Jean Shaheen and Congressman Mike Turner. They visited Georgia. They met with President and they met with Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze and Salome Zurabishvili. And judging from the statements which they've issued later, we see that senators clearly say that the only person who is basically a decision maker in Georgia is still Bidzina Ivanishvili, and he has no interest in U.S.-Georgian relations. He basically refused to meet with the senators. And the only reasonable and rational person in all of this situation turns out to be the president, Salome Zurabishvili, who met with them, and she issued a statement afterwards that the US supports the Georgian sovereignty, the Euro-Atlantic integration, democratic aspirations, and she issued this positive message that we still want to be partners. We have been partners for 30 years and we hope to go to the same direction. But the rhetoric from the ruling party has been that, oh, we do not want to meet with these senators because we Googled them and they are corrupt. That's what the information we found about them. This is what they are telling to Georgian, basically, electors, that these senators who came to us, they're not worthy for us to meet with them. That's a failure of diplomacy, to say the least, that the senators represent the people of US, and when they come to speak to you about your politics, you should at least meet them. But
Kobakhidze met him and the defense minister met him, but Ioannishvili did not.
The player who is making the moves,
the main decision maker did not.
Yes, and with the defense minister, Irakli Chekovani, met them, and he issued totally different statement what was discussed during the meeting, and afterwards US representatives issued a statement. So he basically said that during the meeting the parties discussed regional security issues and existing challenges, and US representatives expressed concerns about the Georgian government false narratives that led to the postponement of exercise Nobel partner, which happened like 1 month ago, I think. Even statements from the meetings were quite different from one another, they also met not only government side and President Zurabishvili, but also other parties, political parties as well, and CSOs as well.
Yes, and some of the Georgian Dream members had then further comments. The Mamgam Dinaradze, member of the Georgian Dream, he said that Mike Turner is one of the most corrupt congressman, so whatever he says, what he implied is that whatever he says doesn't count. And then Kakhakaladze, the mayor of Tbilisi, what was it that he said actually? Yeah, something that something that the narrative of the senator and of the congressman, it was based on lies of the opposition, that transparency is bad and so on, and that up till today, he hadn't heard any real argument against the law and why the law is bad. So he was saying, if you're our friend, you should explain why it's bad for us, but you're not explaining. And then, the Prime Minister, Kobakhidze, who decides nothing in the country because he's just a figure in the hands of Ioannishvili, he said that hopefully next year the US-Georgian relations will be reset. And, definitely it will, because it will be a coalition government in Georgia, a democratic, pro-European, pro-American coalition government, and we will definitely have a reset in our relations.
Yeah,
I will quote from the statement of Senator Shaheen after the meeting with the PM, Kobakhidze. She clearly says this: I was disappointed that the Prime Minister did not make any suggestions about what he and his administration were willing to do to improve the relationship with the United States. And we talked about a number of concerns that we have. One, I mentioned earlier, the suggestion that the United States has a plot to overthrow the Georgian government. That just absolutely is not true. So I would hope that the Prime Minister and his government will look at steps that they can take in the future to continue to improve the relationship that we have had with Georgia for over 30 years, which has been a strong relationship. They are clearly trying to reach these Georgian, Russian Dream Party members that the United States does not really care who is in leadership in Georgia as long as they play by the rules of democracy and basic diplomacy, basically. That these kind of statements that somehow West is the war party, somehow they have this agenda to install their puppets and they want to Maidanize Georgia and these crazy ideas, they should not be spreading this to like openly like this, because
Yes.
they've been on payroll or from US, basically. They've been receiving tens of millions directly for the improvement of the Georgian government, their parliament, and these bodies of government. They've been financed from the United States. And of course, after this rhetoric, the relationship has changed. There are no more finances and there are no more military trainings. And I think all of the world, the West, our elections, we are all waiting for the elections. So let the people decide if they want to move on with this type of rhetorics and have this type of government, or they choose an actual change and to see the world through a different lens rather than a lens of a person who was recently, by the way, investigated by different journalists, different organizations. Yeah, he was put under a microscope, his Russian assets, and I mean, he has, of course, a lot of interest in Moscow, and basically, since 2011, this has been public knowledge that he has assets in Russia, but he promised during the elections that he would sell his Russian companies and revoke his Russian passport, but the investigation says otherwise. He's been acquiring more and more land in Russia, and it's under his wife's name, basically. And he has in total about 14.7 million worth of property in Moscow and in Odinstovo residence. And yeah, he's basically acquiring wealth there.
And he acquired some this April as well.
Yes.
So
yes,
very recent.
this year he's also
Maybe he's preparing for departure.
Yeah.
Maybe that would be great if he just lives there. But yes.
So what else is a lie? He probably didn't get rid of any of his Russian companies and assets, and he held 1% of Gazprom shares. I think he was the largest individual shareholder of
we understand
Gazprom.
that he wants to have these business relations with Russians. I mean, he can have whatever kind of business relationships with Russians as long as he lets go of Georgian statehood and stops kidnapping the entire nation and putting our foreign affairs under threat with the US. The people's interests lie elsewhere and the leadership's interests lie elsewhere. So this conflict of interest must be solved. He either has to fully take on the responsibility as a leader of the country or leave politics completely and become a businessman, whatever, stay as a private person. But as long as he's the decision maker, he should be considering the people and the country and the future of this republic rather than his company interests.
You're being very idealistic.
This is ridiculous. His people, his party, they are all of them dependent on him. And basically, he is the only person who is supporting this his empire, this Russian dream. These people have no authority, no fame, no nothing without him. Basically, all of these leadership members are in power because of Bidzina. People elected Bidzina, and Bidzina delegated his power to these puppets, basically.
Actually,
and these people, he has to realize, they're not doing a good job, at least. These people, they have failed in diplomacy, which caused the country to be in questionable relations with the US right now. They are failing domestically because they have made no reforms in justice system, no economic reforms. The projects that have been pending, like Anaklia port project, has been pending for basically decades now, and they have no initiative. he has to realize that these people are not for the betterment of this country, and they are even bad for him. He should realize that other parties, other politicians should be given a chance who have some type of ideas, at least, to how to rule this country.
Yeah,
I don't know,
yeah.
like libertarians.
I just discovered the level of Becca's idealism, actually. I didn't know
It
it
might be
before.
idealistic, but this is practical. That he has to see that there are other people in this country, like Surab Japaridze, I don't know, many other politicians.
Why does he care about?
Of course, he
yeah, I
does
know
not
what
care
you mean.
about
Of
these
course,
people,
of course.
but he cares about his business, right? If he looks at this country as a business, he spends at least like $500 million in running this country.
Well,
like
we don't know what.
organizing his
Sorry,
party,
interrupting.
whatever.
We don't know what Russians have on him and what they are
Sure.
threatening him with. So there are some
course.
rumors in Georgia or some opinions that Russians are threatening him with his family or his own life if he doesn't hand over Georgia to Russia, basically. So, and Russia has a lot at stake here now because. It's the last Russian government in Georgia. They cannot have any more government here because they have no social, no political or cultural foothold, and the new electoral laws, the proportional representation, does not favor a one-party capture of the state, unlike the mixed member representation before, which resulted in a disaster in Georgia. So, they have everything to lose in the country now. So Ivanishvili might not be autonomous in his decision-making.
Exactly.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm mistaken, but maybe he wants
It's
to
a
leave
theory,
very much,
however-
but he can't because he's too deep into it and they have something on him. So,
And another thing is that with Saakashvili case, we talked about it earlier, it was different because he listened to the US and Europe, and he had something he respected them, and he didn't want to be believed that he is the president who didn't hand it the power. But with Bidzina, he's very open about anti-Western rhetoric, and I don't think that he will ever, in any kind of negotiations, agree on something with Europe or USA. So I think that it's gonna be much worse. Let's see what happens on 26th of October, but yeah, after 26th of October, I don't think that there can be any kind of negotiations with USA, Europe, and Bidzina, because Bidzina said, he said very clearly that he is not cooperating with the US. So that is maybe not autonomous decision of Russia.
and also, so they're already laying ground to rejecting the Western assessment of the elections. They're saying that there are already traces that there's foreign interference in Georgian elections. Of course, they don't mean Russian, they mean Western, and they indicate, for example, the Danish funding of democracy festivals in Georgia, CSO-led democracy festivals in Georgia. So yes, we should keep an eye on it. Our foreign partners should keep an eye on their rhetoric because, yes, they're laying grounds to not considering Western assessment because they're probably afraid that the West might deem the elections illegitimate. Well, I'm not saying that the elections are pointless, definitely. Our main strategy is to focus on the elections, on the big turnout, and we believe that with enough turnout, there's a big possibility that we will simply overwhelm them and they will not be able to rig it as much as they wish to rig it. So all our eggs are in the basket of the elections right now.
Yeah.
But we don't know how unhinged and how crazy they've gone. So let's see. Well, sometimes I get asked questions like, what about the sheer force? There are some things that play positively for us. The Georgian Dream doesn't have the army of Georgia, and the police is also not fully and to the death loyal to them. So it's not guaranteed that they would have a security sector backing either. And plus, if we overwhelm them at the elections. Anyway, so one thing I wanted to add was that Senator Shaheen said that the support for the Georgian people and Georgian democracy is bipartisan. Yes. The Georgian Dream has tried to convince its own supporters and its own enablers that if and when Donald Trump comes to power in the United States, then all the sanctions will be lifted and the relations with the United States will be rebooted. So when they say that there will be a reset next year, that's what they mean, that the leadership will change in the United States, that Ukraine will be forced to give up territories, and then no one will have problem with Georgia's management anymore.
And I wanted to add one more thing about senator and congressman. They also visited the occupation line,
yes,
which is very important to Georgians. Even our government officials have not been to the occupational line, and that's where he said that even though US has paused some of the assistance to Georgia, they are still standing with Georgian people, and they continue their support to people of Georgia and to the Euro-Atlantic aspiration of Georgians, which we appreciate very, very much from the congressman and the senator. There was another news, since we are talking about U.S.-Georgian relations. President Biden disappointed with Georgian government anti-democratic actions and false statements. So basically on August 9, Georgian President Zurabishvili shared on social media a letter from the U.S. President Joe Biden commemorating on in the 16th anniversary of the August 2008 war and expressing the United States' steadfast support for Georgian territorial integrity and sovereignty. So the letter dated on August 7 makes a clear distinction between the attitude of the American people and Georgian government towards the people of Georgia and Georgian government. In the letter, President Biden underscores his disappointment with the Georgian government's anti-democratic actions and anti-Western messages, and emphasizes that despite the shared values between the US and Georgia, will continue to unite the countries.
I will add on top of this Georgian, Russian, and U.S. relations that America said that Bidzina might be under obligation with Russians to act in a certain way to give up this country to Russians. That may be that he's not independent in his actions, that he receives certain orders or threats from Russia. But at the end of the day, I think he's still an ordinary human being beyond his billions of dollars and this country to run. He's just a human being. He has a family. He's close to 70 years of age, and I think he's concerned with safety issues. His primary issue is with safety, I think. And that's why he wants to remain in this country, to sort of lock himself down in this his own territory to be protected. I think the solution for him lies in this election. Actually, this can help him. Democracy can even help him. If he somehow allows democracy and pluralism in the parliament, he can play this hand with Russians that the Georgian people are not so easily led into authoritarian regimes. We have been these authoritarian regimes for decades now, and we are simply bored. This story cannot be sold to Georgians, and I am doing as much as I can.
I think that was back in 2020 when he when he told Russians that, it's my personal opinion, when he told Russians that, okay, we'll have this kind of government with this kind of parliament, and now it's like the end point for Russia. You either have the country and have the full authoritarianism, either you'll have plural government and coalition government, and Russia cannot do anything in that government. So I think that's ideal way if Bidzina does that, but I don't think that's gonna happen.
I think he should. He doesn't even want to be in the public eye. He has exited politics 3 times and has returned because his whole group is focused is basically hanging on his own reputation, and people really do not trust Mamukam Dinaradze or Kobakhidze or some of these leaders, so-called. They just trusted Bidzina in 2012, and this has been the same play going on. He has not added new players in his team, he has not changed anything really, and he has relied on his own reputation. But the best thing for him might be to really exit politics like a businessman. At some point when you build a business, you sort of delegate your power, you scale it, and then you automate it, especially in these days. And he needs to build a system where, like, the best system has proved to be democracy, where the system allows the process to carry on without his involvement, without his constant need. And I think this responsibility is too much for him to deal with, sole responsibility of the country. Democracy is the best option for him. Also, decentralization of power, that would be perfect for him, even for his situation. It would help the country, of course, it will help the people. But imagine if he was not the only responsible person for all of Georgia's problems, Tbilisi, Batumi, Kakheti, whatever. Everything is under his shoulders right now. If there is some kind of catastrophe in Russia or something, he is the decision maker whether to send the emergency pilots there or not, and at what time. So I think you should really think about this election as a way out of his situation, that this might provide even safety for him. And
yes.
And when it comes to Russians, I think Russia, based on the experience we had with Russians, they of course want us separated, divided, of course, but they still, I think, want us close with Europe, because we are sort of uncontrolled territory, this middle corridor, and of course they don't want us with joining NATO and becoming members, but they still want us to be close with the whole rest of the world, because Russia is being banned from all of the world. They're not even in the Olympics, basically. But I think they will allow us some type of relations with the EU and not fully capture us as part of. But I don't know. Until they maybe form this BRICS alliance fully and they create their own, cooperation, these independent states. I don't know, but yes, for sure Russia has interests in Georgia.
I don't fully agree, because
that's my personal opinion. That Russia will allow us to be in some type of connection with the rest of the world for their own benefit, of course.
But same as Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan are also in connection with the rest of the world. It doesn't mean that anyone is eyeing European Union membership there, right?
Even Hungary.
But no, Georgia's membership in European Union is a problem, because Russia sees Georgia and Ukraine as part of their territory. So remember, they forced Yanukovych to not sign even association agreement with the European Union. I understand in Georgia they had to be a little more compromising, because the Georgian population is overwhelmingly pro-EU, 85% consistently, unlike Ukraine of 2014 and 2013. So they had to do some breadcrumbs for Georgians. Okay, the visa liberalization is fine, association agreement is fine, especially after the Maidan in Ukraine. But that's it. You cannot go further. Membership is not really allowed. The Georgian dream would have continued to be neither here nor there, somewhere in between, if not for the war in Ukraine, because the war created the window of opportunities for us. Remember, the government of Georgia didn't even want to apply for European Union candidacy status. It took lots of demonstrations in 2022 March for them to even apply. They were saying that we will be applying in 2024, so they wanted to have it as an election campaign thing now in 2024.
So anyway, basically become Belarus. There's no other way.
They want to have, of course, they want Georgia as sanctions, money laundering, whitewashing. So they want Georgia to be in contact with outside world, of course. But But like it doesn't mean that Georgia will be allowed further European accession, because as I said, like Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Armenia, other countries have also been, according to the United States Sanctions Commission and the Jim O'Brien, they've also been helping Russia with sanctions evasion, like United Arab Emirates and so on. So for us, yeah, maybe we will exist. Of course, I'm not saying that like we will be wiped off the map, but like it's a very bare minimum. Like if we're not, yeah. So
I understand what you mean, but there is one point I see there that I might differ. The integration with EU has two parts, right? We signed this economic free trade agreement before, which allows us to trade goods with EU and to travel freely in EU. But when you become like full member, you receive your basically border becomes united with EU when it comes to taxes and like the import and export tariffs. And there are other aspects. I think what the most important aspect for Russia is the people. The relationships between the people. They want Georgians to be closer with Russians. They want Georgians to be like Russified, speaking Russian and accepting Russians as like they're like we are the Soviets, we are the same type of people.
Yeah,
they want
world.
to spread that narrative rather than Georgia is Europe. Russia does not want that, of course. People associating themselves with the European culture, it's a imperialistic thing to steal the identity of a nation like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. All of these people, they speak Russian, right? That's what I mean. They have their own languages, but come on, most of our neighbors, they still have been influenced with Russian language. Even Georgia we had to fight for Georgian language for centuries because
they speak Russian as a lingua franca more?
You can say this, but this is Russian method. That's their MO. When they invade the country, they just want to steal their identity. And one of the ways is to take away their language and to instill their own. And I think that's the imperialistic view of Russians when it comes to Georgia, that yes, they will allow us some type of freedom with Russia, but when it comes to culture, people, identity, they want us to remain like the Soviets.
If I may add, yeah, and speaking of Central Asia, right now there's a movement, and just like Central Asians are becoming increasingly aware of the necessity to for everyone to speak their native languages as a mother tongue, and that's great. But I wanted to add that in the 20s of the 20th century, so in 1920s, one of the fathers of Russian Eurasianism, called Nikolai Trubetskoy, he said that the problem with Georgia was that it was impossible not to recognize some form of independence or autonomy of Georgia, but it was impermissible for Russia to recognize full independence of Georgia, because Georgia is the key to the Caucasus and the Baku oil. Back then, Baku oil was very important, but in general, geographically, too, Georgia is in the center of the Caucasus. Whatever happens here affects the rest of the Caucasus as well. So he said that that's the problem. We cannot fully recognize the independence of this country, but this country has a long tradition of independence and statehood, so it's impossible to fully ignore it either. And he said that since Georgian nationalism was very much in tune with Europe and Europeanism and European nationalisms, that was the problem. And the solution was that Russia should instill into Georgian minds that Georgians are Eurasian people, not European people. So to convince Georgians that the true Georgian nationalism is Eurasian version of identity and not European, and that's what they've been trying to do. Even today, the Kremlin playbook never really changes. It's just effective because the West has not come up with anything to counter them until very recently, if at all. So that's what they're doing. All the topics of this Russian culture and same religion or whatever.
It's the same with Ukraine. They are
Yes,
attacking
of course.
Ukrainian identity. Like the Ukraine has never existed. It's Russia. They want to say the same thing about Georgia. Yeah, I can understand that it's their one of their strategies to steal the identity. But when it comes to relations, I think Georgia will have some type of liberty to choose our economic partners.
Let's finish with Georgian opposition's news. So basically, Georgian political parties started campaigning, opposition parties, coalition for change with the leaders of Nika Guaramia, Nika Melia, Khostaria and Zurab Japaridze. They started opening offices in different regions of Georgia. They've been to a couple of regions already, and they're planning to go to other regions as well. In one of the regions in the western Georgia, where they had an opening of the office, they were talking to the media when one of the leaders of the coalition of change, Nigamelia, was punched while giving the interview to media. So the whole thing is the whole footage we have. We've seen it. We know who is the attacker. I don't know if there started any investigation on it.
Of course not.
Of course not. This is one of the examples of what is happening in Georgian politics basically during the campaigning. Since the campaigning only started in August, we are gonna see these kind of things more and more, I think, and it's just a beginning. So every politician in Georgia needs to be careful and needs to probably work in groups so that it's a least chance of someone attacking you. So one of this violent attacker, as we know, he's just some hired titushki who just did a job of punching someone. So he was not really a citizen who is really angry at a leader. He was just hired.
Yeah, he was a hired government tag, of course. And our partner should keep an eye on Georgia because this kind of attacks and assault might definitely happen. And the Georgian Dream leaders have promised that it would happen. I think it was the Speaker of the Parliament or whoever, they're the same basically, said that the angry people would give a response to the opposition when the opposition goes out to the regions. But what is noteworthy is that like the opposition, the Nika Melia and our team, we were able to proceed with the schedule of our offices openings and meetings. So this incident was not able to disrupt our agenda there, which actually kind of demonstrates the opposition power and GD's lack of power to some degree. Plus, where the incident happened and Nika Melia was hit in his eye, it was Samtredia, the hometown of Kaladze. So in Georgia, for Kaladze, it would be a big humiliation probably if the opposition went to Samtredia and there was no incident or anything, no opposition no opposition of enraged public against the opposition. So it seemed like it had to be done there, but again, our partners should keep an eye on Georgia because assaults might go on and get even worse. But on the other hand, we also see that it didn't disrupt our agenda and we carried on. And just in general, the opposition seems to be gaining some momentum, going outside of Tbilisi, meeting with people, getting their feedback, opening offices and just doing all the groundwork and networking for the full-blown campaign to begin in autumn. While the Georgian Dream is just like confined to their offices and only insisting on the war propaganda, which it's a double-edged thing. Like on the one hand, that is scary, of course, like we still need to counter their propaganda, and them not campaigning might be the indicator that they don't care about the results of the elections. They have other plans for the elections.
Did they actually campaign ever again? Like
Yeah, last several
like going
elections,
to
yeah,
people
they
personally
did.
and-
But they're not doing it that much now. So, like on the one hand, it might seem that they're exhausted in the sense that that they're not welcome. But on the other hand, like there might be a concern that they don't care about the election results at all. They have the other plans for
Actually,
elections.
whenever, like we've seen recently, Nino Zelosani was comforted as well. Whenever they went out to different festivals or anything like that, there was a live shooting of comforting them, someone comforting them. So I don't think that they're quite comfortable and with going out and talking to people, especially in the public places, when they don't know that they have their people who is gathered.
Yeah, well, let's remember the April 29th sham rally that they organized. They brought people and public sector workers under pressure to Tbilisi. And even then, they did not trust that anyone would clap for them. So they had recorded claps for their rally. Everywhere they go, they encounter actual angry people, unlike the opposition.
It's the ultimate level of scamming when you record the applause from the audience. When you fake that is this type of people. We have to realize who these are. And there was a news also in US, Helsinki. US people have also realized just how scammy these people are. That U.S. Helsinki Commission urged the U.S. State Department to crack down on the call centers that sponsor Georgian Dream's anti-democratic campaign against the Georgian people. According to the U.S. Helsinki Commission, Georgia's ruling Georgian Dream Party relies on dark money from a network of scam call centers around the world to fund its operations and harass its oppositions. Another method is like scamming elderly citizens out of their pensions. That has been their method as well, to create the pension funds, which is another topic.
Oh, they're hijacking our pension fund right now with new legislation. They're basically essentially nationalizing it, and God knows where our money goes now.
They will either scam you with the call centers or take away your pension with the legislation. Either way, they're after the pension funds, and they want to use these funds for their own political agendas. You ask, why are they not campaigning in front of people and audiences? I mean, how many ways can you scam these people, the same people that you've been scamming for 12 years? I mean, they've of course exhausted this method to directly look them in the eye and tell them it's going to be better this time.
No, they're not even giving out promises. They're not even saying that something will be better. They're only saying that when the opposition comes, it's war. That's all.
Also, do you remember before us?
Not even that anymore. By the way, I haven't heard that in a long while. Now the only thing they say is that when the opposition comes, there will be war. And recently, well, the opposition has been quite responsible in terms of not doing anything overnight with Russia about the flights or this trade and so on. And then the Georgian Dream got really pissed off and said that now the opposition became pro-Russian because that's the only thing they can say. And about public sentiments, we can finish with remembering the classic that when there was this football celebration, we welcomed our footballers back. The Irakli Kopakhidze Prime Minister was booed on this thing so much, and then the president replaced him, and in 1 millisecond, the booing turned into cheering and screaming her name. I was there, and the contrast, I will never forget that in my life. It was so fulfilling.
I think he was heartbroken in that moment.
Yeah, and somebody joked on Facebook that the first exit polls were in.
So I just want to add one more thing. The Institute for Individual Liberty was conducting a 3-day liberal academy with partnership with Coalition for Change, and they had speakers who were from these political parties: Zurab Girchi Japaridze, Giga Lemonjawa, Elena Khoshtaria, Nika Guaramia, and Tengo Tevzadze. And of course, this organization were always targeted by the government TV stations. Last year, we even got an attack from thugs, the hired titushkis in Borjomi, one of the regions where we had a camp. And this time, the TV stations, they arrived and they did a propaganda short video about us that Coalition for Change is planning some kind of like revolution, not even revolution, planning an escalation of political situation in Georgia after 26th of October, and that this might get more violent with revolution as well. So this is one of the narratives that Georgian government always gives on opposition members, especially on the opposition who is popular amongst youth, because that's very good propaganda manipulation for them, that someone is preparing Georgian youth to do something horrible after elections. So yeah, this is one of the things that happened, and I want to also to tell our viewers and the international partners to pay huge attention on this organization as well, because one time they were targeted, they were attacked. So if they continue their work, it might happen also. Yes, definitely. So yeah, I think
that's it.
That sums up for now. And stay tuned. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching.
We'll see you soon.